Most of us are aware of the work of Oskar Schindler thanks to the film Schindler's List. Less well known are the righteous among the nations. These are non-Jewish people recognized by Israel as having put their own lives on the line during the Holocaust to rescue Jewish people from the Nazis. Like Schindler, they worked at great personal risk to help men, women and children escape from Nazi-occupied territories to freedom. Some rescued thousands, but all are remembered for their bravery and compassion. Number 10. Maurice Saxe took 79 Jewish orphans to Canada. Georgetown, Ontario, Canada was a long way from any of the fighting in World War II, but that was the place that Maurice Saxe, a Jewish dairy farmer, called home. He had come to Canada in 1902 and was by all accounts a hard-working man. When he learned what was happening to Jews in Europe in the lead-up to the war, he wanted to help, but there was only so many options available to a farmer in Canada, so he made an appeal to the Canadian government. He asked for 79 Jewish orphans from Poland who lost their parents in the First World War to be sent to Canada on the condition that he trained them as farmers. Canada's government allowed it to happen, and Saxe ended up opening a farm school in 1928, years before the formal start of World War II. The school only lasted for 2 years, apparently a result of poor funding and trust issues with the main funder, but by then 79 visas had already been issued. Number 9. Mary Elmes smuggled hundreds of children in her trunk. Mary Elmes was an Irish Quaker who had worked with the London Ambulance Unit and later at a children's hospital during the Spanish Civil War. When France became occupied during the Second World War, Elmes worked with other Quakers to help save Jewish children as Jews were being rounded up with French police. She would take children under the age of 16 with their parents' permission from the Rivesaltes concentration camp and drive them into the Pyrenees Mountains between France and Spain. She hid them in the trunk of her car. By 1942, 2,289 Jews were taken from Rivesaltes to the Drancy internment camp, where they would ultimately be transported to the extermination camps. It's said that 84% of the children escaped deportation, mostly thanks to Mary Elmes. There is no formal accounting of the numbers, but it's estimated to be in the hundreds. Number 8. Abdol, Hossein, Sardari saved thousands. Iran declared itself neutral just as World War II was starting and thus was not involved in combat on either side. But that doesn't mean Iran had no involvement at all. Abdol Hossein Sardari was the Consul General of Iran and the sole diplomat in Paris after the Iranian ambassador left the city in 1940. At the time, Iran was declared an Aryan nation by Germany because of strong trading between the two countries. This gave Sardari an in as he fought to declare Iranian and other Middle Eastern Jews as ethnically the same as any other Persian and not technically Jewish. He claimed that those Jewish people, called Jagutis, might still practice Judaism, but biologically they were not Jews and were therefore exempt from any efforts to restrain their movements or imprison or harm them. It's believed that Sardari may have saved as many as 2,000 Iranian Jews and others from the region in this way by appealing to Nazi officials using their own language and ideals against them and convincing them that those he was trying to save were not really who the Nazis were opposed to in the first place. Number 7. Feng Shan gave thousands of Chinese visas to Jews in Vienna. We chiefly think of World War II as being a war between several superpowers and then smaller nations that were allied with one side or the other in a lesser or support capacity. One country that's often overlooked in the history of the war is China, who was allied with American and British forces chiefly against Japan. They formally joined the alliance in December 1941. Dr. Feng Shan was a Chinese diplomat posted in Vienna during the war. From 1938 to 1940, Ho issued Chinese visas to Jews trying to flee Austria in numbers that we might never know. It's possible he helped tens of thousands of Jewish people escape, but many of the records are long gone, so a proper accounting can't be made. At least one surviving visa issued was numbered above 4,000, so it's a safe bet that at least that many escaped, thanks to his efforts. It's believed Ho was one of the first diplomats in the world to start helping Jews at a time when many others were still on the fence, not eager to start any potential issue with the Nazi regime. Ho issued visas to anyone who wanted them, whether or not they even wanted to go to China. He wasn't pretending to do anything except for save as many people as he could. All of this was done in direct opposition to the wishes of his superiors, who wanted no visas issued. Ho never told anyone what he did for his entire life. He died at the age of 96 in 1997, and not even his wife and children knew. Number 6. Chiun Sugihara defied orders to give Japanese visas to Jews. Despite their military involvement in the Second World War, not everyone in Japan agreed with their country's position. One such individual was Chiun Sugihara, Japan's diplomat in Lithuania during the war. As people fled Germany and other occupied territories, Lithuania was one of the countries that saw a massive influx of refugees. Sugihara began issuing visas to Jews that would allow them to stop in Japan on their way to somewhere else, places like Curacao, for instance. Others wanted to head to the US or Canada or Australia. The fact that they didn't actually have a destination visa didn't didn't matter. The goal was just to get them out of danger by fleeing to safer places. The end result was that over 6 weeks, Sugihara issued an astounding 2,139 handwritten visas and potentially saved over 6,000 Jews, all while his superiors in Japan kept demanding he stop doing so, as refugees kept showing up with no money and no destination plan. Number 5. Aristides de Sousa Mendes issued thousands of visas. Portuguese diplomat Aristides de Sousa Mendes was stationed in France during World War II. Portugal was officially neutral during the war, but dictator Antonio de Oliveira Salazar had banned Jews from entering the country and offered no aid. Fortunately, Sousa Mendes did not feel the same way. Disobeying the rules set down from his superiors, Sousa Mendes began issuing passports to Jews in France. He was in Bordeaux from 1939 to 1940, and what he had done did not go unnoticed. But it was the dedication to getting it done that made the difference. He worked tirelessly, issuing literally thousands of passports in a relatively short time, and managed to distribute a staggering 30,000 of them. The refugees were able to flee France for Lisbon in Portugal before spreading out all over the world. Many traveled to the United States, as Portugal's neutral status made travel much easier. Number 4. Angel Sanz Briz issued thousands of fake Spanish passports. Diplomat Angel Sanz Briz was instrumental in saving the lives of at least 5,000 Hungarian Jews during the Holocaust. He forged fake passports claiming that they were Spanish citizens. He got permission from the Hungarian government, where he was stationed, to issue passports to just 200 Jews of Spanish birth. He surreptitiously turned that into 200 families, and from there he just kept increasing the number for as long as he could. Briz was able to pull off this scam by invoking a law from 1924 that granted citizenship to the descendants of Sephardic Jews who were all kicked out of Spain back in 1492. It was a farce, to be sure, but it was a farce that saved lives. Number 3. Gertrude Wilsmüller-Meyer saved 10,000 Jewish children. Sometimes called Auntie Truss, Gertrude Wilsmüller-Meyer was a Dutch banker and seemed to have been motivated to get into social work after the First World War. Though she had no children of her own, she worked tirelessly to help Jewish orphans and refugees, relocating them to the Netherlands and the UK. It's said that those who helped her did everything from bribing train officials to charming Nazis when necessary. At one point, she even took a personal meeting with Adolf Eichmann, one of the major architects of the Holocaust, and convinced him to let her take 600 Jewish orphans to the Netherlands. Wilsmüller organized the Kindertransport, transporting children from any Nazi-occupied areas ranging from Germany to Austria to France and seeing them safely to Allied territories. Even as borders closed and her ability to transport them diminished, she would still bring food and supplies when she could. As many as 10,000 children were saved thanks to her efforts. Number 2. Konstantin Karadia saved tens of thousands. Konstantin Karadia was a Romanian diplomat during the war when his country was allied with the Germans. He saw firsthand the treatment of Jews by the Nazis, including Jews of Romanian origin, and requested many times that officials in Bucharest do something to help their people. Unfortunately, there were strong threads of anti-Semitism in Romania at the time, and Karadia's pleas often fell on deaf ears. When Romania opted to include Jew as a label on Romanian passports, he successfully fought against the change, arguing it would do nothing but make things worse for people. And while his protests may have had some effect, it was his continued issuing of travel documents that had the greatest impact and led to around 51,000 people being saved from deportation and Nazi death camps. Number 1. Karl Lutz of Switzerland is credited with saving 62,000 Jews. It's startling that Switzerland's Karl Lutz is not more well known than he is. Lutz may have single-handedly saved more lives during the Holocaust than any other person, and though it's by no means a competition, his story is one that more people should know. Stationed in Hungary as a diplomat, Lutz has been credited with leading the largest diplomatic rescue operation of the entire war. Hungary began deporting Jews to Germany in 1944, and when Lutz's protests failed to make any changes, he took matters into his own hands. He started issuing letters of protection, which put Jews in Hungary under Swiss protection. Now, here's the thing about Lutz's letters. They were all numbered from 1 to 7,800 or 8,000. Sources differ on the matter. They were to be issued one per person. Lutz issued them not to individuals but to families, and when he ran out, he started again at 1. His hope was that the Nazis would not look into it enough to realize he was reissuing numbers. After the move, Lutz rented 76 buildings that then became Swiss diplomatic sites, all of which were set up to house more Jews under Swiss protection, where they received food, shelter, and medical care. He and his wife literally walked with Jews during the death marches, pulling them out of line and showing papers to Nazi officials declaring them under Swiss protection. Historians believe, thanks largely in part to his ruse with letters of protection, that Lutz may have saved as many as 62,000 lives.